Beautiful. So a couple of topics for today, please.
Recognizing Christ in your life.
Mental constructs.
Hold it.
Breaking through.
Spiritual awakenings.
What's that?
Spiritual awakenings.
Grounding.
New beginning.
New beginnings?
Wholeness.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay. So, it's interesting because today what you're asking for really has to do more with the new life. If you notice that theme, it wasn't crisis challenge. You know, it's great. I guess, it's great because nobody's been watching the news, and that's good. You can tell when they're watching the news, they're, political corruption, So thank you for offering some better ideas. One thing that's important for us to recognize is that we've never left God, but we are dreaming that we did, which is not a dream, it's more of a nightmare. But we never left God because you can't leave the all. I mean, it's all. How do you leave the everything? So what you can do, even though you could be in the safety of, if you have, let's pretend, healthy family and you're a child, you can be living in their household and be totally safe, but you can still have a nightmare, right? You can still have a nightmare. You can still have your perception of something. You can wake up in a hot sweat and cold sweat and whatever else is going on, just shaking and panicked and, honey, it's okay. No, all upset. Honey, you just had a dream. And that's the mother. And that's not just the day you go home to heaven. This is what's happening every day. Panic. And then the mother's always just, shh. It's okay, honey. It's okay. No, you don't understand. Do you know what's happening in the news? Have you seen the economy or whatever? And she's like, I know, honey. Imagine that the mother aspect of God, the nurturer aspect, is, always trying to soothe our forehead and calm us down. Call it a shoulder rubber, whatever feels right for you. But the mother is always trying to say, honey, would you like my opinion? No, I don't. I want to tell you mine. They're called prayers. See, that's ego-centered prayers. Not here, heart-centered prayers, but ego-centered. I want to tell God what's going on in case God missed it, and I want to also tell God how to fix it. And that's what people call, it's desperate level prayer. Guys, do that. Prayer, any kind of prayer is better than none. But also evolving to the place of, I forgot how to pray. God, can you remind me? Mom, how would you like me to pray? Well, why don't you start and get out your initial, oh, thank God, and here it all comes, download all your panic and upsets, and this person doesn't like me enough, and that person doesn't, and my addictions and whatever else. Are you done? No, here's one more. Boom. Okay, now are you done? I think so, yeah. Okay. Now you'd like me to teach you how to pray. Let's pray that despite all this stuff, repeat after me, honey. Okay, Mom. Despite all this stuff that's going on, seems to be going on in my life and in the world, show me that none of it's real. Show me that none of it has any real power over me. No matter how insane we act, show me that it has no real power. Let me feel that. Let me download that. Words, the breakthroughs and spiritual awakening. And yet, one of the requests, grounded. This is how you take God and you tether it to the ground. You anchor the presence of God. Not by wishing God would somehow fix our material problems, but taking all the lofty presence of God, the spiritual concepts that are essentially abstract mind, and saying, I'm ready to experience, I'm willing to experience God's presence despite the way the world looks. So really, we can be taught to say, despite the way things seem, show me your way. Show me your viewpoint. See, God's not going to say you're wrong for having a feeling, a fear, a doubt. Go ahead, get it out of your system. So then do it. Get it out of your system. But are you willing to change it? No, I want my way. That's not going to go well. And that's where depression comes in. We crash because we've seen so much garbage in the world and it's not getting better. So we keep crashing into various forms of depression. Or you can avoid depression with lots of stimulants, which is just the opposite extreme. Oh, I don't feel depressed. Cocaine seems to work really well to keep me kind of up. That's not healed. You're just still in avoidance, one of two kinds. It's always stimulant or sedative, but you're not healed. But it's scary to say, I don't know. This is what I think is happening in the world. And if I don't know, I can let them tell me. It's kind of strange. Because no matter what news program you were to go to watch or newspaper, all they're doing is telling you opinions that have an agenda. There's never like just somebody going, well, here's an objective perspective. It can't be objective perspective because humans are involved. The human ego would never just write an article and say, this is a really clean kind of perspective that might help people out. That's not going to happen in this world. So part of our prayer is to be in the world and not of it. Father, Mother, God, I know I sometimes feel weird saying that I've got problems because Michael said they're an illusion, but am I still allowed to say them? Yes. My teacher, my book said, let the human come forward and out. Sneeze it out. That's why the body sneezes. Stuff has entered, it reacts and tries to get rid of it. Nausea, toxins that it's trying to purge out. And everybody wants to tape their mouth closed so they don't vomit. That's really healthy, right? You got to get it out. The body is saying something isn't right here. That's why children, when they're babies, spit up a lot. They're saying, where in the hell am I? They don't want to digest the experience of being here. That's the symbolic meaning to it. So they're spitting up going, I don't want this. There's something they don't like. I know there's biological and other reasons, but this is the psychological reason. So there's something that just doesn't feel right. And so how do we change the world? The humble prayer, but get the yucky stuff out and then surrender it and then have it replaced, right? Don't pretend it's not happening. Get that out. But when you do, give it up. Get it out, give it up, and replace it. That's a great bumper sticker waiting to happen. The greatest tool that in this universe that we actually have, and it's one that we all have, and it's the mind. But you don't hear me using that term very often because people think that I'm talking about the thinker. And it isn't the thinker. But there's one power that exists in heaven, Eden, and earth. It's the mind. Cars don't exist in all three. Internet doesn't exist in all three. So one thing that exists in all three realms, made primary realms, heaven, Eden, and earth, is the mind. Right? And any of them that are higher, like the God is the mind that you have in heaven. The soul is the mind you have in Eden, which is, we'll call it the higher dimension, like fifth dimension. And then the human mind is what you have on earth. The higher ones always exist in the lower, but the lower can't exist in the higher. There's no human mind in the divine mind. Does that make sense? So the higher shine down, but the others can't shine up. So each of these essentially has two parts, but there's the divine mind, the soul mind, and our human intellect or human mind. But each of these has a sort of two sides of the same coin. But for example, the divine mind, in heaven, you have God's ultimate, the real God mind, and you have your perceptions of the God mind. So somebody can write a book or they can write a poem and say, God was downloading to me. That is your perception, your experience with God. Doesn't mean it's the absolute yet. So God can be experienced in two ways. The absolute God and your perception of it, your filtered perception, which is still divine mind. I'm not lowering it. I'm saying it's still divine, but it still relies on human perception. It's like heaven. Somebody dies, they have a near-death experience, and they went to heaven. You went to your perception of heaven, which is still heaven. But it still involves your mind, a little of your expectations. There's a heaven beyond the one that can be dreamt up by a person, or something that they would experience in a near-death experience or high meditation or whatever. And then we have the soul mind. And the soul mind has two parts. The God part has two parts. The soul mind has two parts. The soul mind has the collective soul, and then it has my individual soul. My individual soul is the one that goes and journeys lifetime after lifetime. It's the one that moves and grooves and comes back, zips on a body, has another human life, unzips it, splits, goes, and integrates it on the other side and comes back. That's my soul. But I also have what's called a collective soul, which is where we're all joined in a collective. Right? Collective conscious. Then the human mind. And the human mind has two parts. But in a way, it has a creative, imaginative side, but it also has an intellect. Just the human ego-based intellect. And you never want to try to solve problems with the mind that created them. So the human mind is just not the higher mind. So if I'm too engrossed in my human mind, I'm using the hands, lower chakras. If my lower mind, human chakras, are controlling my life, it's basically just my conscious mind and my subconscious mind. That's my human self. And people are like, oh man, you got to access the subconscious mind. That's still my human self. It's really not that fancy. I mean, in a way, the human subconscious self is like a recycle bin. A lot of it's just garbage. And we're like, well, that's deep. We access something in the subconscious. It's deep. It's kind of a mixture. You get all kinds of stuff in there. Because the human subconscious is still me and my experiences. It's still my human self. What I'm not going to say is you have to only access the divine mind, since that's the ultimate, right? That's the ultimate higher self, the divine, because you would walk around like some bliss bunny. Nobody would understand anything you're saying, because you'd be like, it's just divine mind. It doesn't help you. We actually need to get the divine mind to be welcomed into the soul mind, and then that to be welcomed into the human mind. This is what that means. When you see me, you see the Father. Jesus was saying there's no filters and barriers between the divine all the way through to what I say and do right here. So when people access this higher divine mind, and I love, again, some of the, reclaiming the Christ life or the awakening concepts. You can't do them with the mind that struggles as a human being. Even if you could access your subconscious, even if you could access your soul, which is your heart chakra, you're still not getting to the highest. So people will say to me, and I'm sure you've heard it, what is the higher self? Or I'm channeling my higher self. I just go, that's cool, In my mind, I'm thinking, which one? Because anything higher than your conscious self is your higher self. It's just not your highest self. Which is why I say, try to go to God and let God, guide what you're thinking, saying, doing. Don't just go to I'm accessing my higher ingenuity. Because there's people that do corporate takeovers. That's ingenious, not at all wise, not at all love-based. They just, they know how to use their mind to come up with ideas. It doesn't mean they're good. Someone decided to do a, collider, as they call it. Someone decided to develop nuclear power for destructive purposes, that is. And it doesn't mean it's brilliant. It doesn't mean it's rational or wise. The human mind cannot come up with solutions because the human mind is still the limited mind. My subconscious, my conscious, and by the way, we call it the conscious self. It's not very conscious at all. The conscious self is the one that's thinking and right here and aware. My conscious self, I'm awake. But ironically, the more conscious you are and awake you are, the more asleep you are. You can't have both at the same time. It's either God guiding me or I am in charge, even without knowing I'm in charge, right? So learning this humble prayer to start every day. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say and not say? Be my guide. But the human self says, no, I want to decide. I'll decide which thing to do and which thing to not do. Because the spiritual stuff just doesn't seem grounded. It seems too lofty, but it isn't at all. You could say, guide me, God, to which gas station I'm going to go to get ripped off. Just kidding. Which gas station should I go to get fuel today? Okay, and, I'm not hearing the name of one, but I'm driving and all of a sudden, boom, it hit me and I looked and there's a gas station. That might be an instantaneous, spontaneous guidance, right? Now, you pull in, you get gas. It could be the clerk working inside that you're supposed to smile at and say hi. God doesn't go, I like their fuel prices more than theirs. God doesn't say, that station is blue. And blue's a higher vibrational gas station than a red vibrational gas station. God doesn't do this stuff. And you can pull up and you can douse and muscle test each one, figure out which gas station. You can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, from God's perspective, they're all even. They're all equal. So what one would you like me to go to, God? Glad you asked. Because God starts doing all these network things, starts connecting. Now, this is perfect. I'm going to have you go to that one where there's going to be someone who needs this and that and the other. But you could assume I pulled in and there was a guy who was begging for money and he asked, can I have $20? And you think it was meant to be. Don't assume. Because when you're asking for guidance, what would you have me do? Don't forget to say and not do. What would you have me say and not say? What would you have me think and not think? You see? Don't forget to throw that other side in. There's an interesting little aside. When Jesus was talking to Helen in channeling A Course in Miracles, she gave personal notes to Jesus now and then. Or Jesus gave to Helen now and then. And he said, Edgar Casey, he complimented. He said he was just brilliant, did amazing things for God. Absolutely great. He said there's one thing he didn't do. He always was willing to do the work, the healing, the channeling, and helping people change their lives. That's pretty cool. You know what he said, though? He said, but he never asked when to stop. He just kept going until he was exhausted enough. He just kept going, and he died of exhaustion. See, now Jesus wasn't going, yeah, you go, you man, you. That's the way to do it. That's how God wants you to work so hard, you die from it. There's no, greater sign of a selfless person. No. Taking care of yourself is also important, the balance, right? So how cool is that to hear the clear guidance that he didn't remember to say, and when should I stop? He would start the readings, surrendering those readings even to God. They would do prayer and all that, but it never occurred to Casey to now and again ask, and when would you like me to stop? So he was teaching Helen, who was scribing A Course in Miracles. There was a point where she said, we took a break for a couple days. We're back. Okay. Do you want me to pick up where we left off? She said a couple times she would say, is there anything that I should go back and correct? And he goes, oh, I'm glad you asked. Because he wouldn't lead her. He would ask her to ask. Learn to ask for the balance you're looking for. So he would say, oh, yes, page 1, there's this, page 5, there's that, and go back and help her correct things. And some of them weren't just like a punctuation, let's say. They were major lessons for her. Like he said, did you notice that the first chapter or two, you don't use the word God? You say it or he or something like that? Oh, no, I didn't notice that. Oh, yeah. Well, is that the way you gave me the wording? No. When I told it to you, I said God. You changed it to it. Would you like to know why? We'll do a little psychotherapy session. Boy, have a psychotherapy session with Jesus. Who are you going to say? I don't think you see me, man. You know, you don't get it. So he's saying to her, you're afraid of God, so you subconsciously filtered out the name God in the first couple chapters. You see? So our mind just has this tendency to mess around like this. Our job is really, while you're meditating, praying, we don't realize this consciously per se, but think about what you're really doing. Are you really just growing? Are you grasping at straws? A little more spirituality, a little more meditation? There's a theme to what you're doing, whether you know it or not. And the theme in part is getting all this stuff that's all cluttered between heaven and earth and get it out of the way and allowing this to come through. Your job isn't to run away or like just jump out of your body and go home. Because God and heaven on the other side are only at the highest your perceptions of God and heaven. That's why people go, oh, I died and I went to the other side and I saw heaven. And oh my God, it was amazing. This brilliant light, this gorgeous, vibration. And I saw my pet dog that died 10 years ago. And thank God I didn't see my parents. Everything was heavenly. No, I'm kidding. But it's your perception of it. See, it's still filtered by, to a degree, what you expect to see. I remember Edgar Cayce and other sources too saying people would pass over and they would say, I saw old grandpa. What was he doing? Because the person had a near-death experience. What was he doing when you saw him in the other side? He was finishing his house. So people are still sometimes doing things they were doing here, but in a more lofty way. In other words, the mind is still there. The human mind hasn't peeled off yet when you pass over. So a lot of it's still seeing what you expected or wanted to see here, or what you expected, which is a higher version. I remember one Christian pastor years, this is back in around 1984, 86, somewhere in there. And I spoke at a conference as this keynote speaker. And the talk was called Heaven, Where Is It and What Is It Like? Boy, I remember that. That's amazing. So I did this talk and I brought up this preacher, this pastor at the time who said he had passed over and saw heaven. So, all the Christian churches that he speaks at, they're like, wow, this guy saw the other side. His description, was like, and God, I saw God. What was God like? Huge. So big that when I stood at his feet, this is what he said, I couldn't even see the top of his toes. That's very literalist, isn't it? And then my favorite, and there's horses and then he said, and there's dogs, but they don't bark. You know what you are? You're just having a near-death experience and you're just a guy who doesn't like dogs barking. It's not like God said, shh, dogs. That dog barked, to hell it goes. It doesn't work like that. The hell of barking dogs. This is human perception. Is it bad? Not at all. Just see it for what it is. But if you have perceptions about the other side, don't you think you have them here? You think you know what is right and wrong. Just sit back and watch it, and you realize none of it makes any sense. There are no answers that the human mind can come up with that are eternal answers. There are no answers that the human mind comes up with that are ultimately peace-giving answers, because people still want to be right. Why do they want to be right? Because they know they're wrong. How do we know they're wrong? Because they're thinking that the problem is outside instead of inside. Well, it is outside. I can prove it. See? And that's, what are you going to argue with that? It's not going to work. And that's why mystics were often either shunned or killed. Because they could see things that other people weren't seeing. They could share things that other people were not sharing in terms of their perception. So I want to get all this out of the way, just open this up. And in humility and practicing forgiveness, all these filters start falling away. But humility, I said, which is kind of like learning to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know doesn't mean I'm stubbornly going to always not know. It means I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. What would my life be like if I didn't carry the burdens of former abuses? I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. See, that's a great attitude. You're not doing it like an I don't know, I'm stuck, I don't know. It's more like I don't know and I'm excited. That is one interpretation of you must be as children to find the kingdom of heaven. What does he mean by you must be like children? Children will say, I don't know. They'll ask questions. Can you show me, God? Hey, what is that? It's beautiful. It's an open mind. Instead of, I don't need any higher minds. I've got my own down here, the human self, that has plenty of opinions. I don't need any others. I think I've got it figured out. And anytime I'm in doubt, I'll just turn on the news. They'll tell me, oh, there it is. All you're seeing is something that favors your opinions. And then you think you're learning something new on the news. I don't know. I don't know. I'm open. You show me, God. And what starts to happen is the filters start disappearing. And in part, you're not going to go from human mind to absolute highest real God mind. What will happen is more and more you start laying aside the human mind. This is how you know you're evolving. The more you're in your head, you're not doing well. It's a good barometer, a good way to scope it out. How am I doing? I'm still thinking a lot. I'm sorry to hear that. It's not that your thinking is wrong. It's that is your thinking coming from connection to source or a lack of connection? Because if my thinking is coming from a lack of connection with source, it's going to be pained thinking, scared thinking, fear-based thinking, ego-based thinking. So I don't know. Just open and open and open. What would you have me know? What would you have me think? I have this situation. I'm not sure how to see it clearly. Guide me. Show me these things. And what starts to happen is the old self starts to die. And one of you was asking about that as well. The sort of the dissipating, the passing away of my old human self. But that's intimidating. Because I've noticed a lot of people become very uncomfortable when they're not in control in their mind. Right? And people that have always relied on their mind, some really strong engineer kinds of minds, and then when that talent starts to fade and they start forgetting, oh no. I remember this very well-known psychologist came to me for several sessions, maybe half dozen sessions. And I remember she came to me and she was starting to lose her mind, her memory, which was really, really not good for her because she was so prided on her thinking abilities. And here I was needing to tell her, let it go, man. Let go. No, I mustn't. And how do I get the cellular memory and the neurons of the... Shh. That's not how. The panic, that's killing the brain cells. Come to peace. And if you pass over tomorrow with an attitude of, I don't care, I'm open, you're going to heaven. If you pass over with, I thought I was a complete person, but I lost some of my brain, now I got to go back and do it again. You're going to come back and be somebody, that's going to have to struggle with that again. The pride of your thinking. So it's okay. The things you thought made you a great person, those need to pass away. The things that made you think, it could be being a great mom. It could be a great partner, a great lover, a great artist, whatever it is. Always before a fall, it's pride. Become attached to things, they've got to go. And it isn't God going, you're bad, I'm going to take this from you. All it is our own soul that wants to remember who we are, saying, honey, looking down at the human self, the soul goes, hey, honey, I notice you're a little attached to some things. And we either are going to be in denial and say, no, I'm not, or we're going to say, dang right I am, and I'm amazing, look at me. And it's going to go, aw, I have an idea. I'm going to help you lose all of that. You thought you were successful? How does filing for bankruptcy feel? No, not that. Oh, exactly that. I'm happy because I have a perfect soulmate partnership and da-da-da-da-da. And then you find out, they were cheating from the day you met them. Well, that tore up my heart. That's painful. And the soul's going, I know, honey, isn't that amazing? See, because you needed to meet you and rise in love instead of finding somebody else and falling in love. I don't want to hear that. I want them back. I'm going to override my soul. God, bring them back. And God's like, no comprende. You know, what? Huh? I don't even get what you're saying here. Wow, 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 wow. You know, so that's not going to work. How do I get it then? Let go, let God. Let go of your agendas, your beliefs. So the first stage is that my human mind, in a sense, has to be retired. Nobody can tell you how much, because sometimes it's in the form of losing your mind, forgetting things. You know, there's people that get very disturbed when they go, you know, I walked in the room the other day and I forgot why I walked in there. And I'd be like, yes, isn't that great? No, it's scary. And I remember it was in the early 90s. I'm sorry, no, it was in the late 80s that I remember going this first time, and I walked into my backyard and I was like, why did I come back here? Now, instead of just like human beings will go, oh well, or they'll get real upset about it, I had a realization. Anytime that something it happens like that, where you sort of lost time or you forgot what you're doing, let's call it. Something just died one moment before, and now your mind is empty, and you're panicking, trying to refill it with something so that it's always full. Instead, what I would do if I were you is, instead of the panic of I can't think of what I was doing, something must have just died a moment ago, and right now I'm in a state of emptiness. You know what's really wise to do when you're empty? Not panic. It's prepare to be refilled. What do you want to be refilled with? The mind that forgot what it was doing, or something new? A new mind, new beginnings. And surrender to God. You know, I'm in my backyard, I'm feeling totally nervous and anxious, or whatever the person's feeling. I forgot what I was going to do, but you know, you drove to the store and you can't remember what you were going to get. Something, honey, something just died. It's called dismantling. And now I'm feeling emptiness. And in a state of emptiness, the best thing to do is put your arms out like an empty chalice. Fill me, God. I have no idea. I even feel funky about sitting at Ace Hardware going, in the parking lot, what was it you wanted? What is it I came here for something. It might have been a screwdriver. But what did you want me to do, God? You know? Well, in Sedona, that might not look too odd, right? But, you know, some places it might seem weird. And yet, what would you have me do or think or say, you know, what would you have me feel? What is it? And then you're starting to access your soul mind. The human mind is going to always try to die because it's right that it dies, because you want to go home and have your divine mind. But when it happens, it makes you panic because it's different, but also because the ego goes, uh-oh. When you start letting go of the human mind, which it has hijacked, it starts to lose power. So that's why it helps make you panic when you're in your emptiness stage, because it is now being threatened to die. But there's no threat. Love doesn't threaten. It'll just stop having power and the effect it once had. So let's get this part to fade. Surrender to, not by judging, just by having less power in our lives. The conscious and the subconscious self. Then, and that's why when you do really deep meditation and you practice truly great techniques of meditation, a lot of what it's doing when you do that, and Yogananda explained this, you start bringing so much light into your body that it starts burning old memories and brain cells. They start actually burning away. And the way he's describing it in his Kriya Yoga and all that is a light in the center of the head, a light that's almost like this brilliant presence that starts shining on the brain tissue itself, changing the chemistry, changing the cellular memory. See, so light has an effect. Light has power. Even though science will never be able to do more than theorize what they think light is all about. Well, we think you could never travel at the speed of light. Oh, wait, now we're figuring maybe you can travel. On and on and on, theories about light. And they can't get it because you can't understand light unless you realize you are light. You can't talk about it with gray matter, just thinking about light, because those are opposites in a sense. So the soul self, we start accessing the soul self. And when you'll know it'll happen, the human self, mind, is going to start fading, you'll know, because, believe it or not, things like that, the memory, the spontaneous, the things you relied on are kind of gone here and there. And I don't mean that this replaces actually having brain injuries or aging and things of that nature. I'm not trying to take away from all that as a possibility. I'm saying this is one of the things that happens. But the soul mind, you'll start to know you're accessing that. And everybody has, to a degree, those spontaneous insights, a line for a poem, a line for a song, a feeling of love, insights. See, that is when you're accessing the soul mind. And you'll know that you're accessing the soul mind when you're practicing forgiveness. The old self is starting to forget. Well, what's the opposite of forgetting? Forgiving. So I start practicing instead of, the human self. I was thinking about this person that I have issues with. And I was thinking about maybe I got to practice forgiveness. And then I thought, no. I muscle tested it. No, they're jerks, definitely. And you validate it and you justify it and so on. But at the end of the day, this other thing happens where you just, wow, I feel like I'm part of everyone and everything. And the behaviors of people. I used to think what was right and wrong. I would deduce it in my head, knowing that I was the one that was right about what's right and wrong and everybody else was wrong. And then you realize, and you've heard me say this, every opinion I've ever had was incorrect. It doesn't matter what it was. Well, no, this person's good looking. And if you ask anybody else, they agree. Just because you get other delusional people to have the same opinion doesn't mean it's true. As soon as you look at a body, which isn't there, by the way, and say it's good looking, you're incorrect because you're looking at a hologram. See, so how far do you want to go with this? People can argue things about war. Auschwitz and things like this that went on, murdering people, totally out of it's wrong. It's hurtful, right? And you could just make an assumption. Man, and if I was there, you know what I would have done to those people that worked in those concentration camps? Did you know American soldiers did do that? They murdered the attendees or the prison guards at those places. I have to tell you, if I walked into those places, I would be appalled at the hurt and the behavior, but my focus would be on helping the people that are living. I would not want to think that I'm doing a good thing by killing the people that harm them. Put more time into feeding and helping those people that are still alive. Now, some of you could say, no, you're wrong, Michael. It's right that they killed those people. And you're off to the races with a human head, and you can't win. So, A Course in Miracles challenges you and says, anger is never justified. Hate, murder, it's never justified. But we're talking about a mind telling you that, a mind that's up here, and the human mind down here that will not be able to comprehend it. So, if you hear wisdom teachings and find yourself becoming annoyed, agitated, reactive in some way, you can either try to be right or you can just choose peace and happiness. I must have been mistaken. I want to be happy. I don't want to be the one that comes up with the solution to yet another human problem, because you're using human mind to deal with human mind. How about going to soul mind? I think that's a better idea. How about going to divine mind? I think that's even better. But be careful, because divine mind will not give you the human mind responses that you thought you needed. It will sometimes be, one of you was saying just yesterday in a conversation, they were doing some ceremony. They saw a vision of their mother who passed away, and because this person would not forego their spiritual beliefs and go to the tradition that their mother was, the mother wrote them out of her will, which was millions, if you don't become my religion, then you're out of the will. And he said, no. That's pretty cool, isn't it? He stood his ground. I think that's beautiful. But he had this vision quest or whatever, the ceremony, and saw, his mom, and the guide in the exercise said, now who you see? I'm seeing my mother. Now let's tell her you forgive her. No! I mean, it was so funny to hear him saying, he's like, what? I was homeless after her death. I got kicked out of her home because she owned it. I got kicked out. I was homeless. Now you start going, oh man. See, a minute ago, you would disagree with his decision to say, no, I'm not going to forgive her. Then you start seeing and feeling what he went through. And see, for me, that keeps me out of going either direction with opinions, because there's hurt in people and it makes us do insane things. There's fear in people. It makes us do insane things. So I can understand why he hesitated to forgive. Am I telling you that peace would come from that? No, I didn't say that at all. But I know that for now, that's exactly where he is. And it's okay. You don't have to prove somebody's wrong by feeling hurt. They're feeling hurt. And so it is. You'll start to see, as you access the soul mind, more imagination, more intuition. That's all soul mind stuff. And when you do readings with people, you can do them from the human, because remember, the human mind has the conscious and the subconscious, right? The subconscious is known as your psychic self. So most psychic skills are actually down here. Human subconscious skills. Pretty cool, but it's down here. When you do intuitive readings, it's different. That's coming from this center. Not the subconscious, but the heart, which is intuitive and imaginative, spontaneous. But here's the highest aspects of the heart, is that it can open up and receive even higher guidance. Is that all making sense? When you access a reading like the Akashic Records, which has become a fad kind of word. Everybody now, claims to be accessing the Akashic Records. So I wouldn't even bother having that argument. But whether they are or not, what we do know is it's possible. The more you practice love and forgiveness, the more you get a pass to access the Akashic Records. Because you have to enter your heart to read the Akashic Records, the records of all souls. Why all souls? Because this is where I said the collective souls are. It's my soul that travels, and it's our souls that I'm plugged in with. So that's why reading the Akashic Records is reading the collective consciousness of all beings throughout all time. You can determine whatever was, what is, and probabilities of what might be, and be accurate, because you're accessing the heart. And the heart is far more accurate than the human mind. But again, then there's the spiritual God mind. And the God mind, when Helen was going to channel A Course in Miracles, one of the miracles that happened that made that possible was she sat and she was having this vision. And she was told, here's a scroll. If you unroll the scroll to the left, you'll be able to know anything of the past, which is like Edgar Casey's past readings, right? If you unroll it to the right, anything of the future, which is kind of like a Nostradamus predictions. She could do either one, she was told in this vision. Either you do it, unroll to the left, unroll to the right. You have developed, your soul has developed to the point where you could do any of this if you'd like it. And she was going to unroll it, and she stopped. She unrolled it only this much and saw the words, God is. And she said, I'm going to leave it at that. And when she finished saying, I accept, that's it. That's all I want. God is, that's enough. A voice said, congratulations, you passed this time. And what that meant is, I don't need to know the past or the future. I want to know the holy now. And in the holy now, you have everything. Everything. And then in comes A Course in Miracles, and it changes so many lives, right? So what you do, you might think it's the fancy left and right of the scroll. Choosing the God mind can give you anything else you thought you needed anyway. Except instead of you searching the past or the future, you're allowing yourself to be so accessible to God's mind, it can pour answers of the past and the future. See, but you have to be able to stand here literally or figuratively in your life and say, I don't know. Then it starts downloading. Honestly, parenting skills, mechanical skills, anything. Anything. There's no limit. There are still limits when you're using even the soul mind. But let me share something about that before we're done. Once upon a time, and I was saying the psychic skills are still the human self. The soul mind, much higher consciousness. In the old days, prophets would not be called prophets in Israel if they had like a 50-50 accuracy rate. They were not allowed to access their human mind and come up with some ingenious things. They had to be really clear. Well, think about the soul sciences of the old days, metaphysical sciences, astrologers, numerologers. There was a level of absolute brilliance because it was all plugged into the soul mind. So they could open up the soul mind, even healers. They weren't doers. Let's fix this and surgically do that and this and that. And they weren't doers. They were much more tapped in, the ancients, to the soul mind, which has all gotten lost. Why did it get lost? Because mankind got more into fear and hate. And when they did that, they lost more and more and more of their connection. So they had to more and more contrive answers. You didn't have theories in the old days. There was a knowing. It wasn't a theory. Things weren't maybes. It was. God is. You think, for example, the three wise men. They're called Magi, right? We call them wise men in common English, but they were called Magi. But the word Magi meant magician, and magician meant astrologers. It didn't mean rabbit from a hat. The three wise men showed up and did rabbit from a hat for Jesus, the baby. Hey, look at this. You know, that's not what it meant. The Magi. Magi meant magician, and magician meant astrologers. That's why there's reference to the astrologers, the three wise astrologers that said, and there were more than three, but that said, we followed the star and we know what's going on. Guys, they came from thousands of miles away to a town. They didn't have GPS. To a town. Could you imagine being that accurate in your prognostications and forecasts and so on? To the town. Because they were tuned into soul sciences. It wasn't human astrology, it was soul astrology. And so on. And so those wise men found, in fact, if you don't know this, there's a Chinese emperor at the time of Jesus. And Guangwu. And he was during the Han Dynasty, part of the Han Dynasty. But this emperor, they used to consult the Taoist masters and astrologers. This wasn't like today. How many mayors, governors, senators, presidents, how often do they really get into the advisory of masters on the planet? I know that they consult sometimes with fundamental Christian televangelists. What good is that? I mean, sure, it might be a base level of, would you pray with me? That's pretty cool. But where's the consulting? Where's the Chinese masters? They used to call the Taoist men and women to come in and teach them about sacred sexuality. You know, I'm finding that I no longer have desires. Well, that, you know, emperor, that is because of this, that, the other. You do this, and then blah, blah, blah. And wow, it worked. Imagine how the novel concept, the stuff that worked. So this emperor has chronicles, actually recorded in the chronicles of the time of Jesus. And he says, something happened. Because it's just like the wise men. Something's happening. And a child from heaven is being born. Very cool. 30 years later, 33 years later, he says, something horrible is happening. This person that was born from heaven is carrying on his shoulders all the mistakes ever done by all souls. I mean, how did he get that? You know, like, oh, look, full moon. I guess that means do. No, that's weird. It's because it's partly soul intuition that's getting the guidance. You don't just look at a star and you know that means that a guy's carrying the sins of the world or whatever. How did you know that? I don't know, the star twinkled. That's not how you, that's, the metaphysical sciences of old were part the calculations and part the intuitions. Brilliant. And this master, he said, something's happening. This guy is carrying all of this. And then it happened, looking to the heavens. And he said, this person has been murdered. He could, through astrological deduction, he's been murdered. He also noticed the signs in the heavens included. In the day, it was a solar eclipse, and at night, a blood moon. And that just added to the something, there's a very big omen happening. But that's not what told him the details of what it was, right? And yet, he downloaded all of this. And he said, and he wouldn't meet with anybody. He stayed locked away in his library or residence or whatever. He wouldn't talk to anybody because he was so overwhelmed with what was happening. I saw in the stars a child of God being born to the earth, carrying all this, and was going to deliver everybody, going to deliver the world. Salvation, here it goes. And then the stars, the moon, the sun, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, something terrible is happening. He's been murdered. He's been killed. So he goes inside with this terrible feeling about all of this. But 3 days later, there was a rainbow halo around the sun. And he said he's being told somehow everything's okay. And he was reassured. But I'm saying that the average physician, metaphysician, whatever, today everything's coming from doing. The human mind figuring out what to do to fix eyes, to fix throats, to fix whatever people are struggling with. And they come up with all stuff, it's in their head. Now they'll just go, it must be COVID. I got to trim my nails. Oh, that's COVID. You got to trim your nails. That's a sign of COVID. Everything just keeps getting blamed on things or on groups or on people. We have to disconnect from our reliance on this world, guys. And I'm not going to get into all the details about that because it can be a bit overwhelming to imagine yourself doing that. It's not going to be just that you unplug your TVs. We have to unplug our investments in this world because this world is not going to give you any answers. But what's really strange is people can sense that you're unplugging from this world and they won't like you. It's the ego within people. There's an evil within the ego that looks upon people and says, I see you. I know what you're doing. You're trying all that love stuff. We can't be having that. You think you become a target just with your political beliefs or your religious beliefs. This is several times more intense than that. When the ego senses that someone no longer buys into its story, it becomes very intimidated and it's coming after you. And it will take the form of, people's aggressions and people being violent. So, be prepared. Start by getting your inner strength, plugged in, right? But also be prepared. Just let the human mind and all its old connections, let them die. Let them pass away. Stop hanging around in groups that are violent, aggressive, verbally or otherwise. Stay, just walk away from hate as best you can. Well, I can't because it's the workplace. They pay me my checks, and that sort of thing. I had jobs now and again as a kid, and they thought I was weird even then. I was like, why do we have lunch breaks? Because all we do is everybody gets together and starts hating people. I was like, can I just leave early if I don't do a lunch break? Oh, no. The system, So I had to sit, and so I'd started bringing books, and reading something spiritual. But you got to choose your life. This is all a choice when I'm saying this. Remember a couple weeks ago I talked about the literal-minded people and the symbolic-minded people. Symbolic is like this, literal is like this. Narrow, wide open. And I said, this is a choice we make. And today I'm saying it again. Do you want to be tapping into heaven mind that downloads to your soul mind that then also downloads to your human mind? Do it. It's a choice. Don't do it. That's a choice. Get get stuck in the human mind, and you'll have the same problems, and all they can do is get worse. It's like the medicines prescribed for something that make you sick in 5 other ways. The human mind cannot fix anything. It really can't. The human mind doesn't even exist. Let's understand this. If you're not in your body, if you die and leave, your brain will stop working. And your brain is a metaphor of the human mind. So I'm saying that the human mind has no creative ability. Oh no, my human mind, I came up with an idea once. That was your soul mind. When your human mind comes up with something, if it's beautiful and brilliant, it's your soul mind. If it comes up with some conjuring to fix something or do whatever, it's the ego always moving you horizontally on the chessboard of life. You think you have this problem, what we need to do is this. Hey, let's blame them. Or let's do this, or let's do that. Right? We need higher phone access or whatever, and then you raise the bar on the amount of radiation in everybody. It's always coming up with these strange things and then justifying itself. We have to learn to say, you know what? No, it's okay. Of myself, I am nothing, and not rely on the human mind to get me anywhere. People are addicted to living this way. So you can't just tell, your partner, your parents, hey, listen, I was listening to this talk, and we all really need to unplug. Or your children. We need to unplug from this world's stuff. Kids, we're not going to watch the news in this household. We're not going to, okay. But where do you draw the line? Where do you say we're not going to engage? Pretty soon you have some little cult in your house where, we heard that one neighbor, they don't allow their, children to brush their hair because it disturbs their aura. Pretty soon it's going to get weirder and weirder. So where do you draw the line? Teach only love, for that is what you are. Everything else is an addiction. See through it. You don't have to wrong people. But you of yourself, what are you choosing? Others may do as they may, but as for me and mine, I will serve the living God. I'm going to live like this to the best of my ability. I'll pass that on to my kids. If they're interested, great. If they're not, that's fine. I'm still going to be doing this. But people are addicted to not living here. So when you try to correct them, you're taking away their heroin. The word addict or addiction comes from the Latin atticus. And atticus or addiction or addict, the word atticus was something they used often for slaves. If you were a slave, you were an atticus. Why? Because addiction enslaves you. So that's why we started coining, using it in that terminology, an addict. So you were being equated with, Spartacus and the other gladiators, these people that were in prison. So it literally means like to be enchained, enslaved. And yet we have common addictions, alcohol, drugs, sex, food, and codependence and so on. That's all. I'm an atticus. I'm an addict. I'm addicted to these things. How do we know? You're enslaved by it. You're enchained by it. How do you know? You can't stop thinking about it. I'm addicted to worrying because I just worry all the time. I'm addicted to fixing, in my mind. There's problems. I got to fix it all, or whatever addiction you might have. If you perceive your life is out of control, you're going to be, really worried all the time and have to think you have to fix things. Fix things, I'm talking about not being capable of being at peace. My kids, I gotta fix them. They're in the wrong spiritual beliefs. Stop. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Focus on the center. Focus on all that God means for us. Starting to close here. This is the concept of 2 heads are better than 1. If you want to get to this life, it comes through forgiveness. Accessing our divine mind comes from living mastery concepts, like the workshop and talks I've done on that we're doing this weekend, but mastery and love. Those are the 2 primary skills that bring you home. Practicing a life of mastery and a life of love. And the way you most practice love, forgiveness. Well, wait, isn't there a special yoga technique posture? No. Well, what about if I eat certain? No. What if I stand on one foot on every Monday with my eyes crossed? No. What if I turn my one hand this way? No. It isn't the doings. Love. And all you're asked to do, love everyone, everything, and forgive yourself when you're not. That's it. See, so it's love and forgiveness. Because all you're doing is forgiving everything you haven't loved, which then makes it turn into love. So it's love and then oops, and then back to love again. So it still stays love. Stay in that state of mind of love. What would you have me do, God? Somebody popped into my mind. What would you have me do? Obviously, okay, love and forgiveness. Okay, fine, I forgive them. Flippant, you put that much into it, that's how much you'll get back. Can you really, really bring this home, into your center? I see that something's a little off here. I can see codependence. I can see resentment or whatever it happens to be. How can I bring this to love? And try your there's a few techniques that are brilliant. They'll always work. You do one, if you forget any other, just the ho'oponopono, what they call Hawaiian prayer. That's a great catch-all. Or some other simple technique. One of the ones I've commonly taught. 3 steps. Refuse to hate them, learn what you can from the experience, and affirm that there's a light made in God's image. There's a light of God in that person. If you can pull off those 3 things, I'm telling you, you probably have practiced forgiveness today. Does that mean they won't show up in your mind 3 years from now? No, another piece might come up. But I'm saying you can count on forgiveness having happened if you're willing to refuse to hate them and willingness to learn what you can. It's called being responsible. It doesn't mean you have to take on their responsibility. Just be responsible enough to say, what can I learn from that? And if you answer with things like, never trust jerks, you might not be really hitting that bar of forgiveness. But you know what I would do? I refuse to hate them. I'm learning to never trust jerks. And just doing that will make me laugh. And believe it or not, I'm actually getting closer to true forgiveness. Because I knew it was preposterous enough that it made me laugh. That's actually good. The next time I do it, I might go, God, remember last time I threw in that jerk kind of thing, And now that's not coming up. Guys, you're getting closer. Do those 3 pieces, those 3 steps, and you're getting closer to love and forgiveness. If you're getting closer to forgiveness, getting closer to love. If you're getting closer to love, you're getting closer to God and divine mind, including your own divine mind. And so when we say, I forgive someone, this, you've heard Jesus say, 2 or more gathered in my name. Do you know that some people actually think that means having 2 people sitting in the same room? Well, because logically, 2 people gathered. The concept of finding your twin soul is actually a corruption of find forgiveness with everyone. It's not find one person you like. The rest of the world's messed up, but I found my twin. That's a compulsion that you're looking for my one and only. Which one and only is it? One and only. Everybody is one, and that's all I care about. That's my only concern. So all of a sudden, everyone is my twin. And as soon as I get that, there's not even a twin, meaning a second. I'm one. So forgiveness takes you back to holy-mindedness. Please take a few centering breaths. Just that nice exhale, decompressing thoughts, fears, concerns. Holy, 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 holy. I am part of God, and I am very holy. I am part of God, and I am very holy. That sets the tone for a moment. Do I have other thoughts that try to leak in? Just see them and let them pass and come back. to your mantra. I am part of God and I am very holy. And as I accept that truth, I am part of God and I am very holy, I also accept the following. I make no decisions alone today. Two minds joined as one. It's God, my brothers, sisters, and me. All that was duality is one. I make no decisions alone today. I'm not alone. I'm not broken. I'm not alone in my life. I'm not alone in my thinking. I'm not alone in my fears. I make no decisions alone, that broken, scared person. Instead, I choose to make all my decisions with God. God as my guide. Divine Mother, you be my guide, my teacher, my healer. I choose not to have any thoughts that come from my little self. I make no decisions alone from my human mind, not even from my soul mind, but from the divine mind. Any decisions I have made or tried to make outside of the love of God, from my little human self, all such thinking, beliefs, and decisions, I surrender to the altar of God. The decisions of what was best for me, who I should marry, when I should stop being married, where I should move, where I shouldn't move. All of my deductions, what would save me from addiction and what wouldn't. All of my assumptions, I surrender them all to you, Holy Spirit of God. And I deny the effects, the karmic effects of all my previous decisions and fears, all my ego-based decisions. And I find myself empty and open to be filled. Of myself, I know nothing. And so I call upon God that knows all, because it is all. And I call upon that holy breath, that holy shining light, and it begins to pour upon me, in me, through me. It pours from the heavens down into my heart and invigorates my heart and soul, gives me ideas and inspirations. I can live a life of pure inspiration, always knowing what I need to know, which place to go, what to say, not say, what perfect paragraph to complete a book, a line in a song or poem, or even a smile and greeting someone or saying thank you. All these can come from one beautiful place now. Because I have the power and the right to say, I make no decisions of my ego self. I make them with you, God. All my previous decisions that affect my life and this world. And throughout all time, I choose, now I have the right to throw them all on the altar. I know nothing of my little self. And I ask you to fill me with the all-knowing. You guide me in what to say, do, think, feel, and not. And I rest in the same place now that I started, except I get it. I am part of God and I am very holy. This can never change. If I get out of the way, I'll know that. So many different ways that I tried to fix my life, that I tried to make things happen. And now I get it. I will move out of the way and follow my guide that always leads me to love, peace, joy, and abundance. And so it is. Very good. Thank you. Just gradually stretch out. gradually come back to the room. In a way, the last few weeks have been a similar theme about choosing between these two various kinds of options. And today, divine mind, soul mind, human mind. Let's surrender the human mind. Let's do our best to surrender the human mind. I am telling you that when people realize you're unplugging from their reality, they'll get nervous. Okay? Because it's truly free thinking. And people that don't like free thinkers will react. To thine own divine self be true. All right? And be careful when you're done here today to not just jump back to thinking. You know, be inspired. If you're going to go get lunch, where would you like to go? Get inspired. God, what would you have me do? Where would you? And we think, oh, yeah, I'm going to ask God. I know He's going to send me to some, tasteless food place. Because God wouldn't want me to be happy because food's an illusion. It's not the case. God wants you to be happy. So you get to have your cake and eat it. It's kind of cool. And people have to get used to this idea that if I surrender to God, it's going to be good. It's not going to be, bummer. I'm going to surrender today to God. God doesn't like us to have money. No, surrender to God. You'll win the lottery. You surrender to God, you'll just gain more income, or you'll have better friends. Your car will work better, etc. Things can go better by surrendering to the better mind. All right. Let's stand and do our closing prayer. Sitting in a beautiful place of healing, appreciation. Sometimes we've asked people at the beginning or end of service to turn and exchange a hug. People are still a little cautious about that, so we won't. But do it in your intention. Just, really, I love you and thank you for being here with us. And, feel that feeling for everybody all around the world that are watching with us. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to have been a part of a place you could come to today. I'm so glad you were there, so I had a place to come to today where we could remember. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Father, Mother, God. Thank you, brothers and sisters all around the world. I'm so sorry that we forgot. I'm so sorry that we've acted so crazy when we're scared and upset about forgetting. But I have a feeling that we have another choice. Instead of forgetting, I choose forgiving. Please forgive me. I love you. And thank you. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for forgiving me in advance. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive is our spiritual prayer. This is not a prayer like a hope. This is absolutely the truth of God. And everywhere I go, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God does watch over us. Wherever we go, God is, I am, we are, and so it truly is. God bless you all. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you soon.